Cyclone Hidaya looming over the coast of Tanzania on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May the 3rd. Hidaya peaked in the early hours of today as a high-end Category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale and is still packing winds of around 85 miles per hour right now, which is around 140 kilometers per hour. It's the 16th storm to form so far this year, and it is code yellow on Ticos as it is a significant threat to land at this point and could strike still as a potent storm. It's 29 days until the Atlantic hurricane season begins, and there are still no areas of interest here, which is obviously a good thing. A few little thunderstorms blowing up though off Hispaniola, and also more severe weather across the United States today. It's 12 days until the Eastern Pacific kicks off officially, and there are still no areas on the radar here either. Very quiet indeed, as a matter of fact, in the Eastern Pacific, but let's not forget, in this basin things can start pretty quickly once you hear the starting gun. In the Western Pacific, we've got these little disturbances here, some thunderstorms blowing up off Hainan and off southern China, and also to the southeast of Mindanao in the Philippines, but nothing interesting really. In the Bay of Bengal, there's some storms blowing up west of Indonesia, but really not much affecting the coastal areas. In the Australian region, there's precious little going on across the whole Australian continent right now, and you can see some low-level cloud in the southeastern part of the country, but mainly a pretty calm day across the whole Australian region. And then we have Cyclone Hidaya, which is drawing closer to the coast of southern Tanzania today. Still unsure exactly where it's going to make landfall. GFS is doubling down on its forecast for it to stay at a lower angle rather than curving up towards the north. And in the South Pacific, there's not much going on here. A few thunderstorms blowing up in the deep tropical zones there, but really very little to talk about in the South Pacific. So let's get on to the main story then, and that is Cyclone Hidaya, this Category 1 storm. We're estimating winds of around 85 miles per hour and a pressure of around 976 millibars. There are warnings in effect all along the coast pretty much from the Meteorological Office in Tanzania. It's 263 kilometers from Kilindoni on Mafia Island, 290 from Kilwa Masoko, 338 from Ikwariri, 341 from Dar es Salaam, and 387 from Zanzibar City. So it's looking like those three locations at the top are going to be the ones that might be most affected by this storm if the trend westwards continues without that curve towards the north. So let's see how it's faring on satellite imagery, and is that westward motion continuing? Well, it's a good question right now because latest imagery shows that there might just be a northwesterly bend on that imagery. The eye structure has been pretty decent all day, especially earlier on, but it's just clouded over in the last few hours, and so question marks as to whether the eye is sustaining or whether it might be collapsing right now. We do expect the storm to collapse before it reaches land. We certainly don't expect it's going to be at its full intensity by the time it makes landfall, but of course you can never be too sure. But we do expect that it will weaken substantially by the time it reaches the coast, but it will probably still contain winds in excess of 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers per hour sustained. There's some more infrared satellite imagery showing the storm's progress and a big bulk of convection blowing up, certainly changing from that eye pattern to more of a primitive pattern again. Here's the Atlantic right now, off the eastern seaboard of the United States. We've still got lots of convection blowing up over the deep south, and that is producing some severe weather and flash flood warnings. In the Caribbean region, things looking fairly quiet, but a few little blow-ups there near Cuba and also that thing north of Puerto Rico. And in the African region, you can see just a few little things pushing off the west coast. We'll be watching this area a lot more closely in the coming months as the season takes off. There's the Eastern Pacific, a few little things there in the intertropical convergence zone, but really nothing pulling out of that, nothing becoming cyclonic. And in the Western Pacific, it's a similar story actually. Quite a bit of convection down there in the low levels, but really we're not looking at anything getting organized here, at least for the foreseeable. And this is the Indochina region and the North Indian Ocean. Certainly a lot of thunderstorms starting to blow up in a few spots, particularly over Thailand and Indochina itself, but in the Bay of Bengal it's looking generally quiet with a few exceptions. Sea surface temperatures look like this, up to 30 to even 32 degrees possibly in some parts of the eastern Pacific, south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec, and looking further westwards, those temperatures starting to increase. The loop current's really starting to get bulky now in the Atlantic, with those temperatures there exceeding 28 degrees, and the Gulf Stream also starting to get itself going. The main areas of the Atlantic there, those warm temperatures starting to spread further north. Western Pacific is well on its way, as you can see here, and some really warm temperatures extending up northeast of the Philippines now. South China Sea still has it, as it usually does at the early part of the year, with the highest temperatures near 32. Bay of Bengal is certainly a hotbed right now, literally, with temperatures up to 32 degrees in a few spots there, the Andaman Sea especially, but moving up towards the north there, the coast of Bangladesh and India, temperatures down to around 28. And where Hidaya is right now, temperatures are around 28 or 29 degrees as well, right near the top of the screen, and along the coast it is around 29. So good temperatures there. And off the coast of Australia, also still holding on some good temperatures as well. Northwest of Darwin, one or two little spots of 29 to 30 degrees still there, and in the Gulf of Carpentaria, but this general area is on the wane. And in the South Pacific, those temperatures also slowly decreasing, but still looking a good account of itself around Fiji and northern Vanuatu. How does it compare to average? The orange zones are above average, the blue zones are below average. We're always looking at that potential La Nina, certainly a cold spot there in the eastern Pacific. The Atlantic is very much above average in the main development region, up to 3 degrees above, but there is a notable cool pool in the Sargasso Sea and the subtropical zones of the Atlantic now, which is certainly something that I'm finding interesting. We've not seen that in recent years. In the western Pacific, we're looking at some decent temperatures there as well, above average and around near average near the Philippines. The South Pacific oceanic heat content looks like this. There's still decent amounts, I'll say, a lot of high values in the very deep tropics. Here's the Northern Pacific. The Eastern Pacific's really starting to get itself ready there for hurricane season, and the Western Pacific also looking very good there between Guam and the Philippines. And also a few spots in the South China Sea as well with good energy. And here it is, the Atlantic. The Caribbean Sea showing some good values there right now, especially from Jamaica down towards Central America. And the Caribbean in general looking good there, and even a little bit of energy encroaching into the Gulf of Mexico. So let's check the GFS for the next 5 days. It has a straightforward landfall, but look how much it weakens as it does so, making landfall in that general area between Mtwara and Mafia Island. I forget that area's name now, but that's where it's calling for landfall at the moment. That would require a southwesterly jog, and since it's moving possibly northwesterly at the moment, I'm still very skeptical as to whether this will happen, and it might be more towards a landfall on Mafia Island or possibly closer even to Dar es Salaam. And this is the Australian region. There is a little thing forming there and looking very odd indeed in the Indonesian region, and then possibly another system that forms sort of out of its energy near the eastern part of Indonesia over New Guinea, and it's just very confusing what's going to happen here. Having said that, the GFS is the only one calling for a fully fledged tropical cyclone out of this, and so we're not giving any chances on this system just yet. Looking at precipitation from this storm, I should mention that GFS initialized this storm with 105 mph winds, which would make it easily a Category 2. Well, here are the rainfall projections for the region. Basically, wherever the storm makes landfall, we will be looking at an additional possibly 10 inches of rainfall. That's 250 millimeters, whether that's further south or whether it's further north, as what we're suggesting might be the case. Certainly have to watch the storm very closely in the next few hours to watch for any track wobbles, and indeed its track in general. We'll have updates across social media and any further video updates where necessary. But look at that, maximums around 12 or 14 inches near the storm, 350 millimeters. Certainly a possibility, but that might be a little bit high. In the longer range, day 5 to 10, well, the GFS is back with predicting a Western Pacific storm, which will certainly excite a lot of people over there. Well, there it is, a tropical storm, quite a large and disorganized one that tries to get itself together. It does fill up quite a bit towards the end of that 10-day period, very close to the coast of Samar in the Visayas region of the Philippines. So there it is, moving at first northeast and then turning westerly, and then possibly turning northwest at the end. Back to the Australian region, and we have that second little system there near New Guinea, and then it sort of recycles, and then we get a third system that forms north of the Northern Territory. That would be a turn up for the books if we did get 3 storms in May, but I think this is pretty fantasy land for the GFS right now. At most, we're going to get 1. That's my take on it at least, but that's that one moving westwards. It eventually fizzles out near Timor. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our products as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And are still waiting for Hone t-shirts. Will never go out of style as long as we're waiting for that blasted storm to form. If you don't know that joke, then we'll have to explain it another time. This is the Scilly Range, day 10 to 16, where we're watching that tropical storm become a typhoon and then moving northeasterly. There it goes, really strengthening there. So surprising to see that on the GFS, because we've not had anything like that in a few days here, but certainly a possibility in May. There it is, passing by Catans Juanes with tropical storm force winds, close to Luzon but not quite, and then skirting off northeastwards and becoming probably a category 3 there as it passes southeast of Okinawa, probably over the Daito Islands of Japan, and just bypassing southern Japan in the end. Low confidence on that one. I would not be suggestive of that particularly at all. Well, on this day, it was May the 3rd, 2019, when we had Cyclone Fani, which was about to make landfall in India. I think it was Odisha or possibly Andhra Pradesh, and then it was moving north and then northeastwards, making landfall probably as a category 4. Very powerful. Of course, it was a category 5 on the previous day, May the 2nd, when it reached its peak intensity. I think it was 165 miles per hour or thereabouts, and then it made this big landfall on this day 5 years ago, would you believe? Well, back to today. The Atlantic starts with Alberto, the first name on the hurricane season list this year. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aleta. And in the Central Pacific, it is still Hone that we've been waiting for almost 5 years as well. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Iwiniar. Watch that long range, it could be that one. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next name is Remal. The GFS showed 1 or 2 things in the past there about formation, but certainly nothing today on the long range models. And in the Southern Hemisphere, in the Southwest Indian Ocean, the next name now is Iali. In the Australian region, it's Robin. And in the South Pacific, it's Pitta. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll have updates as necessary on our channel, and we'll have another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow.